Thank you very much. My name is Michael Saffle. I work for the Boren Awards in the Washington, D.C. office. I appreciate being invited to UCLA again. If you are watching this video on demand, the international office, I've actually was there a couple of years ago talking in person. I hope to be there again someday. I miss LA. It was a lot of fun. My goal today is to talk to you about the Boren Awards. I'm going to keep it relatively quick. This will go over the nuts and bolts of the program, what we're looking for, some tips and tricks if you have already started an application and you're looking for some help. We also have an alum of the program here who will be available and I believe is going to say something, or I'm not sure, we'll find out. But this is a good opportunity to learn more about the Boren. This is a program funded by the Department of Defense. There are many programs in the federal government that try to get more Americans to study abroad. We see it on the DoD side as a national security issue that only 1 in 10 students study abroad in the US. That's 1 in 10 university students. It's a very low number. And we see that as a national security issue, and Boren is one of many programs trying to correct that. Now, the State Department does a lot of these programs. The Critical Language Scholarship is a popular one. There is the Gilman Award for those of you that fill out a FAFSA and maybe Pell eligible. That would be something you should look into. And of course, there's the Fulbright and many others. But we all have something in common. These U.S. programs that are funded by the government have citizenship requirements. You have to be a U.S. citizen to apply to the Boren. That means you have or are able to obtain a U.S. passport and travel on that. We go to certain countries. There are certain parts of the world we don't go to. We'll get into that later. You need to maintain your student status at UCLA. So if you are looking to graduate in May of 2025, this is something you need to talk to your campus representative about and find out, is it possible to apply as an undergrad for the scholarship if you plan to graduate in May? There may be ways you can do that. There may not be. We will figure that out. If you're a dual citizen of the country you want to travel to, that is a no-no on Boren. So my sons are both Colombian and U.S. citizens. They would not be able to apply to Boren to go to Colombia, but they're still free to apply in other parts of the world. And interest in public service. Public service is our code for government service. This program has a 12-month service agreement attached to it. If you are selected for a Boren and you accept the funding, you will work for the government at some point for 12 months. That's the promise of the program. That's the purpose of the program, is to get more people in federal work who have been overseas and speak a language. Now, every now and then you will see a QR code pop up on this presentation. Feel free to zap it with your phone. It will take you to part of the website that I'm whatever we're talking about. So for example, this one goes to our eligibility section on our website if you have questions. Funding. This program offers up to $25,000 for overseas funding, whether you are an undergraduate applying for the scholarship or a graduate student applying to the fellowship. If you are overseas for 25 weeks or longer, we will give you $25,000. If you are only overseas for a semester, we'll give you half that, 12 and a half. And if you are a STEM student who is an undergrad, and you are interested in doing a shorter program, you and you alone, those STEM students, are eligible for 8 to an 11-week program, summer 2025. STEM students are more than happy. I'm more than happy to have a STEM student apply for a 52 long week program. But that is, STEM students are the only ones who can do the shorter 2-month programs. For graduate students, it's very similar. But we do not have that STEM program for graduate students, but we do give you $5,000 should you wish, should you ask for it, to study domestically before you go overseas. So there are, different ways that the programs differ. There are different ways that the programs ask for information, but for the most part, the undergraduate Boren and the graduate Boren are very similar. That funding that we give you is what we call, they cover Boren funds, Boren program costs. So your airfare, your tuition, your overseas insurance, things like that, the basic things that most students will need. We no longer ask for a budget in the application process. So for the most part, you just need to understand what Boren covers and more importantly, what Boren doesn't cover. So we do not pay for your passport. We don't pay for vaccinations or dependents or things that you may have to pay every month while you're overseas that will follow you while you're overseas. Your Netflix, subscription, your credit card bills, your car bills, things like that. These things will follow you. And then you have to make sure that you have the funding outside of the Boren money to pay for these while you're overseas. While you're on the Boren, you cannot work. So you're not going to be doing an online job making money while you're overseas learning Russian. You have to be a full-time student while you're on the Boren program. If you happen to be an ROTC student or a veteran of the United States military, make sure you put yes when it asks you this question in the application. Last cycle, in the 2024 cycle, last cycle, our ROTC applicants had a 69% acceptance rate. Our veterans had a 57% acceptance rate over the last few years. So it is a big boost to your chances of getting the award. Everyone is going to have to make an argument about why the country they want to visit is important to U.S. national security. So if somebody wants to go to Japan, they're going to have to make that argument. Why is Japan important to U.S. national security? We on Boren have a very broad definition of national security. It basically revolves a lot around the Department of Defense, Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, and Intelligence, USAID included. So even though we have that kind of idea of what our preferred agencies are, that national security argument can be a lot different when you're talking to USAID than it is for Department of Defense or the intelligence community. We don't need you to make every argument about why Japan is important to U.S. national security. We want you to make one argument. Focus on one thing. Ideally, this is going to be something that is, nearer and dear to your heart, what you're studying. So if you're an economics major applying for Japan, you make an economic argument about why Japan is important to U.S. national security. If you're an environmental scientist, you can make the argument about why environmental science is important to U.S. national security and what Japan is doing and what the U.S. can benefit from. These are the things you're thinking about, but you make one argument. You don't have to go 4, 5, 6 arguments. If you do that, you dilute that essay. Your essay becomes more generic. It feels more like a chat GTP spit out than an actual essay you wrote. So you want to really be sure, be specific, and ideally there's a sentence somewhere in your first essay that mentions the agency you eventually want to work for in the federal government, because the second half of this application, the second essay, we ask you, where do you want to work in the federal government? Where is it that you see yourself? Not only where do you feel like you will fulfill your service, but what are your long-term goals in federal government? We ask for 12 months, but what we're looking for in the application process are people who have long-term interest in federal service. So if you write your essay too about where you want to work in the federal government as if it's a chore, if it's a burden, if it is something you're only doing because you have to, it's not going to be a very compelling application, and the committee's likely not to select you. You want to talk about federal work and how Boren will help you get that job, how your experience in Brazil learning Portuguese is going to benefit you in the types of jobs you're looking for in the federal government. Most students I've talked to over the years don't really know what they want to do in federal government. There are occasional students who are really gung-ho about applying for the Foreign Service and State Department. But for the most part, students haven't really thought about federal work, especially the farther away I get from DC. We do have a list of where Boren have fulfilled their service on that URL on the bottom. That will show you the different agencies and the different sub-agencies, sub-departments where Boren have fulfilled their service, over 5,000 of them. So you'll get an idea of which agencies are more popular and and within that agency, for example, Department of Defense, where did Boren fulfill their service? Is it all in the military? No. There are a lot of places outside of the military, civilian roles in the DoD where Boren have fulfilled their service. Is State Department entirely foreign service? Actually, not really, because most Boren fulfill their service before they even get into the foreign service. So they end up fulfilling their Boren service maybe in a different bureau of the State Department while trying to get into the foreign service. It takes some time to get into the foreign service. For most people, it takes years. While you're doing that, Boren will help you get that entry level, get your foot in the door position into federal government, where then while you're there fulfilling your service, you are applying or actively looking for other jobs within the federal government. That is very normal for the Boren. We do have priority agencies. When I talked about making your national security argument, I mentioned them. This is when we talk about priorities for Boren, these are some of the biggest priorities. How long you're overseas is a huge priority. For the non-STEM students, you're aiming for 25 weeks overseas. It's the biggest thing that the committee likes to see, where you say, you know what, I'm committing 6 months overseas or more. That's what the committee likes. You only have to do 3. That's the minimum. But over 70% of undergraduates are applying for and getting Boren for 25 weeks or more. Similarly, applicants talking about tier 1 opportunities, tier 1 jobs that they're interested in their SA2 have a better chance of getting the Boren because it is a preference. We prefer to see people talk about jobs in these giant areas. Now, that said, you may be interested in something else. As I said, I get a lot of students who are already interested in certain federal work. For most of these agencies that are listed here and others, they are not tier 1 agencies. What they are agencies within the United States that have jobs that would fulfill your service, and Boren have done so. Again, you have that list of 5,000 folks. You can see all of these agencies there. But Peace Corps is one of those programs where I get a lot of students who are very interested in joining Peace Corps when they graduate. It is something they bring up to me and say, "Hey, this is something I really want to do to fulfill my service." And I don't dissuade them from talking about it in their application. But what I do tell them is or the person who wants to work at NASA, I say, think about Peace Corps more as a 2-year opportunity. And that, remember, Boren is looking for long-term interest in federal service. Peace Corps will more than cover your service. But what the committee is looking for is that long-term interest. So when you see Peace Corps, the committee naturally is going to think, okay, that's 2 years, but what else do they want to do? What are they going to do when they come back from Peace Corps? That's where you can bring up, for example, USAID or State Department and say, when I get back from Peace Corps, I plan to parlay that experience into applying to jobs at State and USAID. Now you're showing the committee long-term interest. You brought in a tier 1. This is a strategy that we're trying to do. President 43 used to call it strategery, right? So we're doing our best to make sure that we have a strong competitive application when you apply. The good news is what you write in your application by no means is what you have to do in the federal government. So if you spend your entire second essay talking about being a foreign service officer and having a specific cone you're interested in following, this like a career path within the foreign service, and you go into all this great detail, and then you graduate from UCLA and start looking for work and end up working at FEMA, like this guy. That happens, and that's perfectly okay. I would probably, if I had to bet real money on this, I would say most Boren do not do the job they talk about in SA2 to fulfill their service. They end up getting different jobs because that job that they talked about in SA2, they may no longer want it, or it's not available when they're looking for work. They're not hiring at that point, and they take a job that is available. The Boren is made up of 2 halves. My half is the education half. We're at IIE, the Institute of International Education. We're the ones that help promote the Boren. We administer the Boren. We help the Boren while they're overseas and make sure that they're getting their funding, make sure they're getting their paperwork in, which helps them get their funding. Once they come back from overseas, we turn them over to the DoD, the federal part. The DoD program, the NCEP team, the NCEP stands for National Security Education Program. There is a group of folks, there are about 5 or 6, it fluctuates, but they are former Boren themselves, whose job is to help Boren get jobs. And they're going to be the ones that keep this NCEP net job listing updated, and you can zap that on the QR code. It will show you executive and featured, exclusive and featured jobs for Boren. You will have job authorities that will help you get your foot in the door. Sometimes the people who are hiring in the federal government may or may not understand what those authorities are. So in theory, the NCEP service team is there to help you with that. We have our own job fair in DC every year that if you are a Boren and you go overseas and you come back, we will invite you to attend the seminar in DC and pay for that travel and what have you. And finally, we do have our alumni association where they can help you with things like resume consulting and such. So there is a support group there. If you are wondering how long do I have to fulfill my service, if you are an undergrad who gets the award, you have 3 years after you graduate from UCLA before you have to start working for the federal government. If you are an undergrad, you go on your Boren, you come back and you decide to go to graduate school or law school or something like that and get a higher degree, we will defer that 3 years until you finish your school, until you get whatever degree it is you're after. So if you go get a master's in something, 2 years later, now you've graduated and are looking for work, that's when we start that 3-year clock. And then you'll have 3 years to start working for the federal government. This is a language program, so we are going to ask you to come up with a language proposal. That proposal this year is due. It has to be at least 15 hours. And the reason we've always suggested 15 to 20 hours is what you should look for in a language program. The problem is some people didn't take that to heart, and they would have a really good application, strong national security argument, strong idea about where they want to work in the federal government, and then just lay an egg with the language program. They tell us that they're going to go to Kyrgyzstan, they're going to study, they're going to live in the city, they're going to learn about the culture, and then they really don't talk about what they're going to do to learn the language. They give us no details. Now we are saying get at least 15 hours of contact hours a week in the language that you're applying for. There are ways you can do that. Sometimes the program has that. So let's say you are applying to Qasid in Jordan to study Arabic. That is a language school. That is a program that is set up. You can just add, depending on, you just add the time to your schedule and you can get 15 to 20 hours pretty easily. Some of you may go to the study abroad office, find a program, let's say in Korea, and that program only comes with 12 hours. So you need to supplement that with tutoring, which you write about in your application, and that's perfectly okay as well. Just make sure you're over that 15 hours. Also talk about what you're doing now, between now and when you potentially would go overseas to study that language or that culture, and what you plan to do when you get home. When you come back from overseas, what are you going to do to maintain that language, to maintain those connections? And finally, have some goals for the program that are realistic. If you've never studied Mandarin Chinese before and you're heading over to Taiwan to study, if you're only there for 6 months, don't expect to be fluent by the time you leave. Have realistic goals. So if you have 0 experience, maybe intermediate is a pretty good goal. You may not get there. We're not going to, penalize you if you don't. But don't say I'm going there with nothing and I'm coming back, basically to be able to hold a perfectly good conversation with a Taiwanese native, right? You want to have realistic expectations. That's the same for those of you who are going with experience. If you already have studied Mandarin, maybe you are on studying Russian right now, and you have intermediate to, let's say, intermediate to advanced Russian. You still need goals. I have advanced low. My goal is to get to advanced high or superior by the time I come back from Kazakhstan, right? Have goals. We have 2 types of programs that the Boren funds, our self-identified programs and our regional flagship language initiatives. Our self-identified programs is just a fancy way to say you go to your study abroad office, you find the program or you find a program online and you ask Boren to help pay for it. This is 90% of the money we give out on Boren. It's for paying for programs that the student gets through their school or through their own devices. These are not Boren controlled programs. These are programs that you bring to us and say, here's the program, this is what I want to do. 99% of undergraduates go to their study abroad office and get this taken care of there. So the study abroad office has the connections for each country, and they should be able to help you out. Very rarely do you go to the study abroad office, tell them the country you're interested in, and they just throw up their hands and like, I have no idea how to help you. Uh, I doubt that is the case with UCLA, but just in case, we have where Boren have gone in the last 3 years under recent language programs. That's the URL on the bottom. That's listed by country. You can just see where Boren have gone to study language in the past. The caveat there is they're not recommendations. We're not endorsing them. We're just listing out where students have gone. So mileage may vary. But we can say, because every student has to tell us where they do their language programs, we have made a list of where Boren have done it in the past. For graduate students who are applying, a lot of graduate students do add internships. Not a lot of undergrads do. A lot of graduate students add research. The key, though, this is a language program. Make sure your research doesn't overshadow the language, because then they're going to think you're just a Fulbright applicant trying to get money from Boren, right? You really want to make sure language is key. If you are interested in language intensive programs that Boren runs, we have 2 of them for a few different languages. These are called our flagship language initiatives. We call them FLEAs in the office. They are available to any level of student except for our French class. Our French one, you have to have intermediate high for French. Everything else, you can be an absolute beginner. But these are intensive programs. I'm telling you, as a self-identified program looking for 15 to 20 hours is what we're asking now. These programs are 60 to 65 hours a week. They are intense programs. We shovel in about 2 years worth of language in 6 months. It's split up between one summer semester, 8 weeks, one summer semester in a domestic school, University of Florida or University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then you go overseas for the fall semester. Possibly longer if you're interested in staying longer, but you get a lot of language with these. Things you have to be aware of. It's very intense. These are small groups. You're in a small, a small cohort. So you have to be that kind of person who deals well with group projects, right? If you deal well with other people, this is probably for you. If you don't deal well with other people, this is probably not the program for you. Do your own program. Any of the languages here, including French, you can do as a self-designed program. But these programs are really for the folks who really want to accelerate their language. The first one that we ever did was called AFLI, the African Flagship Languages Initiative. That program, 90% of the applications are for French and Swahili. That's where most of the students want to study. We don't get a lot of applications for these indigenous languages, Tree, Wolof, and Zulu. But we do offer them if you're interested. The French and Swahili, because we have enough applications every year and enough students who get selected for those 2 languages, we have official programs already set up in Senegal and Tanzania. If you apply for one of the indigenous languages, Tree, Wolof, or Zulu, we don't have an official program overseas like the rest of the FLEAs. So you will have to work with the study abroad office to find a program in the country where they go. But French is the only language in the entire Boren of preferred languages that you need a background in. You need at least 2 years of French under your belt to qualify. So you want to make sure you have that if you're interested in this program. And again, you can apply to any of these languages as a self-designed program. The only difference is for French, you would then have to have advanced French because it no longer becomes a preferred language if you go outside of our FLE. Our Southeast Asian Flagship Languages Initiative, CFLE, that's our new one. We just started it this year. Right now, I have students who are in their last 3 weeks of the program over in Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. This is at University of Wisconsin for 8 weeks. You're in a dorm with everybody, and then you go overseas. And like AFLE, you will be in a homestay in an official program like the Swahili and the French program. All 3 of these have official programs. You don't have to find your own program. Any of these programs, you can stay longer, but you have to tell us in the application. So if you are saying, okay, I'm going to go to Vietnam, it's in, I believe, Hanoi. One after my official program ends in early December, I will then go on to study there or get an internship in Vietnamese So I can say there are a couple of extra months or up to like 6 more months. It's up to you, but you need to talk about it in the application so we give you enough money. Because you were in Vietnam and all these programs, you are 1 semester overseas. So you're getting roughly 1 semester worth of funding. You can double that money up to $25,000 overseas if you decide to stay longer. But that's, for some people, this is the summer and the fall, that's plenty. For everyone, these are the list of countries and that we go to, the countries we don't go to. So the grayed out areas, we don't go. Australia, New Zealand, Western Europe, and Canada, those we don't go there. Boren is trying to get you to go to less commonly visited two countries. The countries that are blue and green are preferred countries on the Boren list. We have this online too if anybody has trouble with colors, but the idea is blue and green are preferred. We get a list from somewhere above us in DoD land, and they say, here are the list of countries we want students to apply to. Now, the blue countries mean that those countries are currently out of reach. We are not able to send students to Russia, to the Ukraine, to Venezuela, and I'm sure you can understand why. They are either dangerous, there is a political situation, or both. We just don't feel safe sending students. So although they're preferred, right now, we don't expect to send students in 2025. So if you were to apply to a blue country, you would have to have a backup plan. So if you were really dead set on applying to Cuba, which is blue, you're going to have a backup plan. And that backup country can't be another blue country. Like your backup country for Cuba can't be Venezuela. You got to pick a green country. If you pick a country like Brazil that's green and you're studying Portuguese, you don't have to have a backup. Japan doesn't have to have a backup. Korea doesn't have to have a backup. But we do have 3 languages that no matter what color the country is, you're going to have a backup. Mandarin, Russian, and Arabic, all, if you apply for those languages, one of those languages, you have to have a backup. So if you apply to Kazakhstan, it's a green country, but you have to pick Kyrgyzstan or Latvia or Estonia or something like that as your backup. If you apply to Jordan, you have to pick Morocco or Oman as your backup. So there are certain rules like that. And for Mandarin, it's China, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia. Those are probably the 4 places you can study Mandarin. I will say we have not been able to send people to China since 2020. It's not blue because we really hope we can send students in 2025, but I wouldn't count on it. I would really, if you apply for China, make sure your Taiwan or your other country backup plan is well thought out because that's probably where you'll have to go. These are our preferred languages. The preferred languages also come from up on high. You will notice Latin America doesn't have Spanish. We have Haitian Creole and Portuguese. And we have a lot of countries in Latin America, from Mexico down to the bottom of Chile, that are green, but they don't speak Portuguese or Haitian Creole. So one of the things we tell students is don't apply to Spanish. Spanish is not a very strong application for Boren. I think Spanish historically in the 30 years is roughly at an 8% acceptance rate. Last year it was 0. Not one person got the Spanish award. What has a much higher acceptance rate? Portuguese. And indigenous Latin American languages. If you applied to Quechua on Boren over the last 30 years, you had a 56% chance of getting the award. Indigenous languages, even though they're not preferred, are very popular with the reviewers. Having Spanish in your background helps you when you apply to an indigenous language or Portuguese in Brazil, because we know that knowing Spanish is going to help you as a Portuguese learner. So that Spanish becomes a value. If you've never studied Spanish and you still want to go to Brazil, there's no harm in that. But if you already have that Spanish in your background, that's great. All of these languages, except for French, you can be an absolute beginner. Never have studied a lick of Korean, that is fine. You can still apply to study Korean. Any questions about countries or languages? All right. I did mention earlier that if you are an undergraduate STEM student, you can apply for an 8 to an 11-week program. That's a summer program for next year. The green majors, those are the STEM programs that we consider that we would give you that option. All of these majors are considered preferences, but unlike time overseas or country and language or agency you want to work out, this is the least important preference. I don't care what your major is. If you are interested in federal work and you want to go study a language, this is still the program for you. I was an American Studies major by the time I graduated. I think I went through 3 or 4 majors before I finally graduated. It's not on this list. It doesn't mean I wouldn't make a good Boren applicant. If I make the argument I want to work somewhere in the federal government and I want to go to Japan, and that experience in Japan is going to help me get that federal gig, I should still be able to get this award. And the committee is not going to give you a hard time. The committee only will look at you side-eyed if you are like a theater major, like I used to be. And you really have to sell it. It's like, it may seem weird that a theater major wants to work for the federal government, but this is how I got here, right? Address it. The international relations majors don't necessarily have to make this argument as strong. We understand that you want to work for the federal government, or at least you have an interest in politics and government issues. But for those of us outside of that area, you may have to talk about it a little bit. So why is somebody in my major applying? The application is relatively straightforward. It is a free application. The only thing this costs you is time. It is going to take you time to write the essays, to hunt down some references, recommenders. We are about to start our Thanksgiving break, and then we have our Christmas holiday break in December. Time is running out. Even though our application isn't due until the end of January, we are losing time on when you can ask professors to write these letters of recommendation, or supervisors, or whomever it is. You are also working with the international office. You're trying to get them to help you with your application, to look at your essays, to give you feedback so you can do revisions, right? This is what you're going to, this is the time. But none of this should cost $1. We don't expect you to apply to programs yet. We don't expect you to pay for any registration fees. We don't expect you to pay for even a transcript. You can use your unofficial transcript that you have access to. Money should not be a problem when it comes to applying to the Boren. We do have 2 essays. We already talked about this, but if you want more information on the essays, there is a webinar on our website under webinars. It's not the last one, but it is there. It's a year old, but the information is still legit. We haven't changed our essay prompts in 5 years, so it is perfectly fine. Just the deadline dates will be a little alarming because it's earlier this year. Don't worry about that part. We also have a webinar about the service agreement on our webinar page. It's the last webinar. That is also a good one to listen in on, because you'll hear the NCEP team talk about federal service and how we work with Boren who are looking for federal work. The deadline of this program for undergraduates is January 29th. It's 2 p.m. California time, 5 p.m. Eastern. January 22nd for graduate students. That means you need to hit submit by 2 p.m. that day to have a chance at getting the award. Most people, I would love to see them apply days earlier, but the reality is 80% of you will wait until the last 30 minutes to hit submit. That's fine. I don't mind. It just makes me crazy every year. When you apply, the earliest your overseas program can start is June 1st, 2025. So if you are looking at programs for Japan, for Korea, some of these countries that usually start their academic calendar in April, remember, Boren cannot pay for that. Boren can't send you overseas, or we can't pay for your overseas program until June 1st. So we're paying for summer programs, for fall programs, potentially winter 2026 programs, but we can't pay for anything before that. And you have to be in person in Washington, D.C., May 29th and 30th. For an orientation. We pay for it. As long as you're in the US, we fly you in, no matter where you are. If you're in California, or if you are in Guam, we will fly you into DC for this orientation. So you can get the security briefing from the FBI and a host of other topics that they go over. Right now in this timeline, we're in the chat phase. We're between start and submit. This is the best time to reach out to Boren, reach out to your campus advisors, reach out to whoever you need to ask questions and hopefully get answers. The notifications after you submit, it's basically a 6-week or so, you're waiting for Boren to get back to you. We will not send the notifications until roughly April 15th. We say mid to late April. That covers our bases, but in reality, it should be around tax day. April 15th. I haven't seen it go much later than April 16th in the last 5 or 6 years. So April 15th is a safe-ish date that you expect to find out whether or not you receive the Boren. And then that convocation, our orientation is again May 29th and May 30th of next year. If you want to set up a meeting, you should already be setting up meetings with your on-campus advisors. But we will also talk to you if you're interested. We will talk to you on Zoom for 15 minutes if you want to set up a Zoom call. Go to our website or email us at boren@iie.org. But if you go to our website, there's an About Us on the top left of the drop-down menus, and then a Contact Us. And there is a link where you can set up a 15-minute Zoom call with somebody on Boren to go over questions you might have about the program, questions you might have about the language program, or I just had somebody ask me about Lithuania and was asking me questions about that earlier today. So definitely we will take those 15 minutes and go over whatever questions you have. What I can't do is answer questions about, well, will UCLA let me do this? I have no idea. Or is this credit going to transfer? I don't know. Most of my questions are related more to statistics and does this sound like a national security argument that will carry water, right? These are the things that I'm normally answering. That is the end of my official presentation, but I wanted to see if Joseph wanted to talk a little bit and talk about his experience applying to the Boren, going on his Boren, and now as he's back, working or looking for work in the federal government.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to share a little bit about my experience applying for the program. So when I was at UCLA, I was double majoring in Russian studies and political science, and I was in the Russian flagship program, which has an overseas capstone year component, which I believe can be funded by the Boren. I don't know if that's still the case.
Still the case.
Awesome. Um, and throughout my time at UCLA, there weren't any students going to Russia to study Russian. So there were new programs that were introduced at UCLA for students to study Kazakh and learn about Central Asia because students studying Russian would typically go to Kazakhstan to study Russian as opposed to Russia. And I didn't have any exposure to Central Asia before coming to UCLA. I didn't know anything about Kazakhstan, but through those courses, I gained an academic and future professional interest in Central Asia. And I really wanted to go to Kazakhstan. I interned at the State Department, focusing on the Central Asian region and doing work with the Kazakhstani government bilaterally. And I thought that this would be the perfect program to actually get to go abroad and improve my Russian skills and get some exposure to the region that I was interested in. And I know the focus of Boren for Russian specifically is so students can enter the workforce and do national security work related to Russia and with everything going on in the political climate. But I thought that there was also a unique opportunity to make the case for Central Asia as a national security priority for the United States because it is an emerging region and there are many competing interests in Central Asia, whether it's Russia, China, Turkey, and the United States needs to increase its presence in Central Asia to increase its strategic power and economic integration into the broader region. So I try to make that argument, but then also there's the Russian side of studying Russian. So yeah, that was my motivation for applying for Boren. I went to Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan in 2022. The program ended up being, I think, almost a year long because we were online for the first 5 months during COVID and then got to go abroad in February 2022 to Kyrgyzstan and then had an extended summer component in Kazakhstan in like June and July. So yeah, it was supposed to be 9 months. It ended up being, I think, like 11 months. And I had a really great experience in it. It definitely led me to where I'm at now in DC. I work now at the RAND Corporation as an assistant policy researcher, and I'm doing my PhD in policy analysis at RAND. And I get to use Russian all the time. I do some stuff on Central Asia, some stuff related to Russia. And I'm satisfying my service requirement, maybe not in the most traditional way because my My work isn't necessarily at a federal agency, but almost all of it is on government contracts with the Defense Department, Department of Homeland Security, and the State Department.
And that's a good point. You can fulfill your service in different ways. It doesn't have to be a direct hire for the federal government. I'm also a contractor for the DoD. What I do would count towards service. If I worked at, let's say, American Council's on the Critical Language Scholarship program as an employee there, the State Department funds that. So I would also be able to fulfill my service that way through ECA. And obviously ECA has a different idea of what national security is than the DoD, but these are or Delencio. So it is an interesting way to do it. What would you say is your advice you would give somebody who's looking at making that national security argument?
I think there are a lot of ways to be creative with it. You shouldn't limit yourself to just thinking about the foreign service officer path. I know I knew like I was really excited about potentially becoming a foreign service officer, but there are so many different ways to contribute to U.S. national security. The missions of DHS and DoD and the State Department and even other government agencies like Department of Commerce are so diverse, and you can really apply your skills in many different ways to contribute to national security of the United States, whether that's research or you're working at FEMA, at DHS doing emergency response. There's so many different ways where you could apply your major and be fulfilled while doing public service. So the advice I would give when making that argument are to maybe do some research on what different agencies do, and if you're really passionate about anthropology, or any field, there are many different ways that you could apply that. So maybe try to be as specific as you can with that argument, and it doesn't necessarily have to be what you end up doing, but it's great to start planning even now while you're an undergrad about potential opportunities you could have when finishing your degree.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to give it to our hosts.
Okay, well, thank you, Michael, for your presentation. So Sahar, Joseph already kind of summarized all the questions that we were going to talk about. So if you don't mind just introducing yourself and going through kind of a summary of the questions I sent you.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sahar. I graduated from UCLA in 2023, technically, but I pushed it to 2024 so I could do Boren. I currently work as a foreign policy fellow for a congressman, and I went to Oman for 7 months from September until around March, and I studied Arabic. And why I chose to apply for Boren was actually I interned on the Hill in 2022, and I had a coffee with someone and she mentioned Boren and we had similar interests. We were both interested in the Middle East and foreign policy. So I did some research and I thought it aligned really well with what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in DC in government, and I also had been wanting to strengthen my Arabic skills for a while. So that's why I applied. And I think there's something about the most significant cultural challenge. So I've been to the Middle East probably a dozen times. I'd never been to Oman before, and it was a bit of a culture shock because it's a very traditional society. Luckily, I was in a cohort of people from all over the world. We were really diverse, and it was really nice to hear from everyone's experiences. But the actual Omani culture is quite traditional and tribal. So it was difficult to go out, especially if you aren't an Omani man. Usually men only go out there, so it was a bit difficult, but I think it was a very unique experience that I'm never going to have again. So it taught me a lot. And the Boren Scholarship impacted my worldview and understanding global issues because I was exposed to such a unique and different culture. And I think when you're living in America, you're in a bit of a bubble, and having exposure to non-Western ideas and perspectives is, I think, really important to inform someone who wants to work in government. So I think that's helped me a lot in my position now as well. My portfolio on the Hill is a lot on the Middle East, especially now. And I think speaking to people in Oman, and I also traveled a bit to other countries in the region. And so I got to hear a lot of unique perspectives that I would never hear because Western media doesn't cover them. So I think it impacted my worldview in a very positive way. I fulfilled 6 months of my requirement through this fellowship. This is actually my last week on the Hill, and then I'm moving back home, and I'm planning on returning. I met someone at the Boren job fair they hold for us. So after you return from your Boren, you go to this job fair, and it has representatives from all different branches of government. And I actually met someone who works for the Department of Justice Office of International Affairs. And through that meeting, she reached out to me and told me they had an opening, and I applied for it. So I have a tentative offer from the DOJ to be an international affairs specialist, and I would never have heard of that job or applied for it if it wasn't for Boren's job fair. So I'm really grateful. And without Boren, I wouldn't be in DC doing this. So it definitely has helped me achieve my postgraduate career goals. And for advice, I would say if you are a senior right now, or you're going to be a senior and you want to do Boren postgrad, it's a bit of a process to get UCLA to extend your matriculation, which is what you have to do in order to do the Boren. So I would get started on that early. I mean, Wilsey was an amazing help, and there's also great people in the registration office that can help you. And I think now they're a bit more familiar with that process. But I would say that, and also if you're interested in Arabic, if you've studied or speak it, you know that the dialects are really important. I think that the Omani dialect is really unique and not really spoken. So make sure you do your research on like what kind of Arabic you want to speak, because you mostly learn Fusha or modern standard Arabic, and that's applicable in the sense of diplomatic relations, or if you want to read the news. But if you want to actually talk to people in the streets in the Middle East, nobody speaks Fusha. They'll speak their own dialect. So I would do research in that. But yeah, I think I hit all the questions.
Okay, thank you. Joseph, do you have anything else that you want to add based on the questions that you have not touched on yet?
Yeah, let me look through the questions 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah, so the most significant cultural challenge I encountered during my time abroad was probably navigating. It wasn't necessarily like cultural, it was more societal, like navigating bureaucratic systems in a non-democratic context. So for example, having to access like a health clinic that's trying to get shut down by the government because it's not following regulations and it's the only eye clinic in the country can be challenging. Or trying to take courses at a neighboring university, like as an elective to deepen your language knowledge when you have the support of your program, but then that university has different policies. And when they hear an American student is trying to take a class there right at a time when Russians invading Ukraine, you don't know if it's going to work out. And what happened to me is I was taking classes there for a few weeks, and then after the invasion happened, they said you can't take classes here anymore. Like I don't know what led to that decision, but those were definitely the biggest obstacles I faced during my time studying abroad. And I overcame them, I think, by doing my best to communicate with people in my program. My cohort was amazing, and everyone supported each other. And also the people working for the American councils in country and also in DC were also very supportive, and were able to let me take a Kazakh class at the host university. And there were different, just kind of trying to be persistent in knowing what I wanted to do when I was abroad was really helpful to get through those kinds of obstacles. And then as far as how the Boren Scholarship impacted my worldview and understanding of global issues, I think it really changed my understanding of the US, because being at home in the US, we always talk about different challenges that foreign societies face, and working at the State Department, you're thinking about different ways you can assist different countries, but you don't really have that introspective lens to think about what issues are happening in the US. And when you're abroad, you realize that everyone's facing the same issues. There are so many things that bring people together and countries together that we can face together. And I think being abroad really helped me realize that there are a lot of the same challenges in the United States that foreign countries also face. Yeah, so I think those were the main things in the questions.
Okay. Well, thanks, Joseph and Sahar, for sharing your experience as Boren Scholars. We'll stop the recording now and we'll open for questions and answers.